There's no audio.
You know, it is kind of weird. It's spooky, Charles.
Okay, thanks.
I don't think I muted the screen.
They tell me where we are or what. Okay.
Okay.
Oof.
You okay now, Charles?
Yes, audio is on now, but I think it's best if people speak into the microphones.
This,
Yes, that's perfect.
Oh, that's not good. Who's that other voice?
Charles, can you mute the screen?
So what is that?
Can you mute the screen?
No, you don't mute the screen, you just mute the live stream. So it looks to me like everything is good.
I know, I'm trying to find the access to it. How come we're getting an echo then? Charles says it's good.
all right, let's go.
Okay, are there any agenda additions or deletions?
None,
Any public comment?
none received.
Mhm. I haven't. I hear myself twice. But freaky.
Nobody else listens to me these days, so I might as well listen to myself. I listen to you. That's true. And vice versa.
It's good. Can't seem to pull up the right screen, to be honest, but Sam is here, we always find the solution.
What are those yellow things?
She's like,
We found the live stream on the tab at the bottom and you, which is what I should know.
Okay,
mhm.
I believe we have no public comments.
Correct.
All right. We'll review the minute meeting. Okay, we're gonna try meeting minutes from July 25th.
To approve the minutes. Second.
Any additions, corrections? Nope, that's okay. First or second, then we do.
Okay,
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
aye.
Aye. Opposed? No opposed, because we all said aye. All right, then we are going to go into the budget, and basically, Nels, I'm just gonna turn this baby over to you to explain. And could you tell us what page you would like us to
Okay,
start?
I don't have the live, I'm doing it on paper here, but
Oh,
but we're on the so we're into the kind of spreadsheet issues here. I want to first start with kind of a little bit of a background and then move into the proposed budget. So first item is the bank account analysis of our assets in cash. It looks like this sheet. It's probably after the minutes
right,
and
and it is on page 9,
right.
if
And-
anybody's following along.
And so what this is looking at is a once a year snapshot. We do an analysis of all of our accounts in terms of cash that the IRA has in its accounts. It's a cash analysis, not an accrual analysis. And the reason why we do it once a year in August is because we have a number of rents that we collect and we pay over to the city. And so they show up in our bank account for a period of time, and then we pay them back to the city because we're basically acting as their agent. For example, the farmer's market property is a good example of that. We collect rent throughout the year, and then we pay it to the city once a year. So in August, our accounts are kind of clean. And they're consistent, so you can look at trend lines, I guess is the most important thing here. We have 7 different bank accounts, and we have them because there's different requirements and restrictions on our funds. So the number, so just so you get a sense, the operating account is kind of our checking account. It is flexible local funds. There's no strings tied to it in terms of federal restrictions and use of funds. The O2 account is our loan account, our ED loan account. Community Development Revolving Loan Fund is what we titled that. And that's showing our loan income coming back from community development loans. The Section 17 one is a subset that was created many years ago. It was actually a rental assistance program using CDBG funds, and the agency said that money should be earmarked for future loans. But that is an interesting category because it's not tracked by HUD anymore. It's so old that it's been closed out, and it's kind of under the IURA's control how to go forward with it. But we do have to be consistent with the use of the funds to be compliant with CDBG regulations. But it's not earmarked for loans necessarily. That's an internal decision. The industrial park account is a local account. That's funds generated from the Cherry Street Industrial Park and the Carpenter Business Industrial Park. Again, local. The UDAG fund is another flexible fund, the Urban Development Action Plan, which was used many years ago. It was closed out. Again, we have a restriction to use those funds for projects that are consistent with those regulations. It's broader than the CDBG regulations. So it can be used for community development in a general way. It doesn't have to be for low, moderate income use necessarily. So it's historically has been used for more economic development activities. The HODAG fund is the Housing Development Action Grant. That was funding from Eddygate project up in Collegetown and has to be used to support affordable rental housing activities. And the final one is our non-CDBG account, which is kind of our catch-all, which is revenues earned by the agency that are under our local control and is kind of our go-to fund when we don't have a fund to pay for something else. That's where we go to typically to pay from that account, or sometimes on a short-term basis that gets reimbursed, but also on a long-term basis if necessary. So as you look at the balances, you can see that the funds have in total increased from the last couple of years, positive in that regard. The 05 account has been the one that has seen a reduction of about $60,000. And that is really a reflection of our way that we bill our time of the IRA. So we always bill to a specific activity. We try to bill to a CDBG or home activity wherever we can, or one of these other accounts. If we're working on a UDAG loan, for example, the agency is working with John Guttridge on his project on the corner of South Cayuga and Green to renovate that project. The agency has just approved a $300,000 loan for that project. Because it's conversion of upper story office to housing at an affordable rent, it's eligible for the HODAG loan. So when I work on that, I bill to that account that pulls money from that account. But if I'm working on something that doesn't have an account set up for it, it goes to the 05 account. That's why we're drawing money from 05 sometimes and why it's going down. It's our catch-all. When we don't have anywhere else to bill time or an expense, it goes to the 05. So last year when we adopted the budget, we thought we were going to be narrowly in deficit by $6,000. But that was assuming that the Inlet Island project was going to move forward towards sale. That didn't happen. We decided to break off with the developer. And so some staff time and expenses that we thought were going to be reimbursed in 2025 aren't. And therefore, they were drawing them from the 05 account. So the overall picture here is that we have pretty strong assets and some resources to work with. The 05 account could be viewed as kind of our rainy day fund if we need to. It's a place to go to. We can't make loans or grants out of those funds because public authorities law says that unless the legislation that created the entity specifically authorizes loans or grants, You can't use local money for that. We can use federal funds because they're designed for various uses like loans to small businesses or for assisting affordable housing. But the 05 account cannot be used for loans or grants to others, which in some ways is fortunate because it means it's earmarked kind of for internal uses more so than other funds. So the good news is we're not declining in our bank balances, but we would like to see that 05 account stay steady as much as we can.
If it can't be used for loans or grants, you use it for like administration?
You can use it for staff administration costs. We could use it to acquire land and do an urban development activity, anything that would be eligible under urban development activities. But we can't do grants or loans. So what we have done in the past is we have acquired property or sold property
then
and
sell it.
used it in that regard, yeah. Or invested in a urban renewal project with staff time, or maybe we're hiring a consultant to do or a realtor to work with us or something like that. So, so that's the lay of the land for our bank account and LSS, which is a little confusing because the way that we receive funds from HUD for CDBG and home is it's on our line of credit at HUD. And we can only draw that money down when we have an expense that's occurred and we can document it. So this looks at a cash basis, but we'll talk a little bit later about our balance on account at HUD for drawing down funds.
We can talk about how long does it take usually to get reimbursed?
It's pretty good. It's so what we do is we do a voucher to the city and the city then vouchers HUD. And then the money goes into the city's Chamberlain's account and then it gets transferred to us because really the grant is the city's grant, not the Ithaca Urban Renewal Agency's grant. The city has an agreement with us to administer it on their behalf. So that keeps the linkages and the responsibilities, everybody knows what's happening with the funds. It's quite quick. It's within a week, essentially, the drawdowns, because we're drawing down every 2 weeks, just essentially. And so those gray area notes are details from our accountant about why are these accounts going up or down. I'm happy to answer any questions in there if you want to dig into them. But for the most part, it's not critical to know the exact details of each one. But if you have any questions and if you can read the tiny print, then we can go into there. The bottom is a table that I think you would find a little bit interesting because it looks at some activities that we have participated in as urban renewal projects for the most part in the past and looks at some of the reimbursed expenses that we've received from those activities. So when we undertake a project with the city's collaboration, such as the fire station on East Hill Fire Station and the sale of the fire station, the agency brings to the Common Council a resolution that says we propose to, we'll accept property and then we'll resell it. And in that process, we add a tagline that says any costs we incurred will be reimbursed to the IRA. And so these are reimbursed costs to the IRA when the Common Council has authorized the agency to basically work as their agent for sale of land and redevelopment. But you can see that the 120 Green Street Garage, the Green Street Garage project, over a series of 5 years has generated $163,000 in revenue to the agency. Some of that's for legal expenses and other things, but much of that is staff time. Those projects are complex and you think they're going to end when they get their financing, but they don't really end quite as quickly as everybody hopes. And you can see we're building up some expenses in Inland Island over the years too, which those have not been reimbursed. So again, that's money that when we sell that property, should we ever go through an urban renewal project successfully with that land, we would get reimbursed for that.
So is it anywhere now or just?
Inland Island, the strategy here is to try to work through two major obstacles where there were identified for redevelopment of the island. One was to complete the transaction with the state of New York for the property occupied by the Coast Guard Auxiliary and provide the state with locations for their dredge activities on the island as easements. And secondly was to provide some better information about the cleanup costs of the parcel that is just south of the Coast Guard Auxiliary building. That was historically a bulk fuel storage area, just like the Boatyard Grill site was. And we want to try to help anybody who's going to be a redeveloper of that property understand what is the scale of the cleanup required. We know generally what it is, but we don't have any precise numbers, so we'd like to provide some preliminary data to a developer, like what's the perimeter, how many cubic feet needs to be dug up, for example, estimate that for them. So that's, we thought we would get that finished. Right now, we're waiting for a survey from TG Miller to identify the property exchanges between the city, IURA, and DEC on the island. And then we'll move to appraisal of those properties, and then we move to the state to try to complete the transaction of the lands.
So you're ways away from being.
Yeah, we're not within 3 weeks or 3 months of that
Okay.
occurring.
A developer.
So that's some background information on our
Yeah.
bank account analysis.
The other one, and you referred to it a couple places. I should know this. 205, 209 West State Street. What is that?
That's the INHS project to redevelop the former medical offices to affordable housing. And so the agent,
I
so
just was like, what would that be?
it's
yeah.
now being titled, the project is called the Lucy, just if you hear that name.
You see?
The Lucy. There you go. So then as another background piece, I wanted to look at our salaries. So this is the next page in your packet. And kind of get a sense, are we staying competitive with CPI? Are we competitive with the city for wages and salary? And so this is something we did last year. And we looked at the IRA, changes in salaries compared to the CPI, compared to Social Security, and compared to the city's planning department contract. And the good news here is the agency, is basically in line with both CPI and with the city's salary current salary. So we're not falling behind, and we're staying competitive. And that wasn't the case last year when we looked at this. We were behind, but there was a 6% increase in last year's budget to try to catch up and reflect the inflation that occurred since 2020. So we're competitive with these comparisons.
Any questions on that?
Totals aren't compounded, are they?
Yes, they are actually.
Are, okay.
Well, the total, let me think about that for a second. Are they
Doesn't matter,
compounded?
it's okay.
We're using the indexes, so I think it is compounded,
Okay.
yeah. So the next is an adopted resolution in your packet that the IRA adopted. You saw this resolution at the committee level.
Mhm.
So I just want to let you know that the IRA did adopt the resolution on a city IRA collaboration opportunity. And the good news is that both the chairperson, the mayor, and Elisa Nicholas as department chair are very supportive of working out some sort of arrangement to recognize when the IRA staff is working on joint city IRA projects that don't have an ability to draw automatically, that they are working on and developing an MOU to do that. It will be for specific projects. It won't be for everything. And there are always going to be things that fall under, out of the realm of that. And it's always been a little bit of a gray area between the IRA staff work on our mission statement and the city, which often overlap, right? So sometimes when we're working on homeless housing issues, that's definitely part of what we work on a regular basis, but sometimes the city calls for the IRA staff to do additional work or appoint us to a member of a working group. So we're trying to figure out when should the city reimburse the IRA for staff expenses? In past years, we had enough money from federal funding that we could basically subsidize that. We didn't have to worry about it, but that's not, as you saw in my memo, that's not where we are today. The federal funds are not keeping up with inflation and not keeping up with cost of living at all. So we don't have that luxury any longer. So this is good news that we're making progress on this. We don't have anything executed, but there's a draft MOU circulating now, and hopefully we'll get to that point well before the end of the year. I know where we are. So then you can move to the budget if you want to talk about the budget.
So you don't want to do anything with page 12, which are just activity projects? Oh, that's just part of the MOU.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Now we're on page 13.
Yeah, so page 13 is a budget to actual. It looks just a lot like our budget as well. So be careful, look, make sure at the top it says budget to actual, because I think it's important to look at, like, are we actually in line with our last year's budget, or are we out of whack with it in any way? So the green columns are the year to date, done as through August, 67% of the year is passed. The yellow column is our adopted budget for 2025, and we are in line in every case, just about, in all the categories. We're nowhere are we running over in any dramatic way. We have a couple of individual lines that are higher, but there's always good reason for it. The independent contractor line, for example, we incurred the audit expense out of that, but the city has agreed to reimburse us for that audit expense because it's really part of the city's audit when they get finished. Again, because most of our funds are the City of Beach grant. So that was not incorporated into our budget, but will be reimbursed. So even that one is in line. Happy to look at any individual exhibit, if you want to look at salaries or insurance or anything like that, we can look at it. But overall, the budget to actual is strong. We're in line or under where we projected we would be in 2025 in terms of their expenses.
Sometimes I notice that you don't spend the staff development, so I always
true.
say this every year. I encourage you to actually
Thank you. Yes.
send that line, 'cause I think it's important.
Yeah, and we're looking for good opportunities because, we do things, there's so many more things online now that you just, you just go into another room or you do it from home and you're not really spending any significant money. We're looking for opportunities. I think there will be some coming up with housing strategy issues, I think there may be some opportunities because coming up that we haven't taken advantage of. And some of those conferences and meeting groups have kind of bouncing back from the pandemic now and having more activities that are in person. Hey, welcome.
It's gotta be, excuse me, discussion, I would imagine, about some of the possible federal
And impacts of, Yes.
consequences,
yeah, that's,
how people are gonna handle that, yeah. Which of course.
and even understanding some of the changes and how the guidance on how to respond to them. Yeah, so there is a lot to swallow there and figure out. And with the shutdown, there's no guidance from HUD, Buffalo offices or anything that we can go to. The last page of that budget to actual is projected revenues, where we looked at our revenues that we projected in 2025 and where we are. We're not at, our 67% there, or I don't know why I put 63 there. It should be
I'm sorry,
67.
where are you?
I'm on the last page of the budget to actual before we get to a resolution called the 2026 IURA budget resolution. So exhibit
Yes.
E-1, yeah. Yeah, so,
We're on page 18 now.
yeah. So that's looking at our projected revenues. It's not really part of our adopted budget, but it's built into our, our analysis of whether we're going to be in balance or not. And so ideally, every one of those resources or revenues would be at 67%. Things are lumpy. They don't always fall in there, but you can certainly see there's a couple of categories that are falling way under.
Oh,
So one is the home ARP grant program, which we thought we would be expending 50,000 this year on. This is the special one-time home funding, pandemic funding, which is earmarked for homeless assistance. And so we've executed a $900,000 contract with REACH to provide those services of rental assistance and case management. We thought we would be, deep into it and spending a lot more time than we have. We're a little bit short. We are starting to ramp up right now for the last 3 months, but I don't think we're going to get to 50,000. So the good news with that is if we don't spend it this year, it's available for next year. Because that
have to be expended by a certain time,
no, 2030.
2030. okay.
What is the delay?
The delay is, again, we're billing our time when we actually spend time doing it. So if we're not actually spending an hour of time, we don't bill to this account.
And why aren't you spending?
We've been a lot more efficient than we expected we would be. And the vouchering was a little bit slow to get started. So they've submitted their first voucher. We've reviewed it. We've we've gone back and forth with them on a couple of elements on it and are trying to set up the framework for that. So I think it's really running pretty well on time. It's not way behind or anything. It took a long time to get started because we had to first adopt an allocation plan, then we had to adopt a manual, a 55-page manual from HUD on how to administer it. And then we did an RFP for who would provide the services. So the two service providers are REACH and 211, Human Services Coalition, which is providing kind of the intake and identification of eligible people for the program and meeting the requirements for eligibility. So then they pass it on and give REACH notice this person is eligible for these kind of services. And then REACH provides the housing or case management services. So it's
Rich doesn't have housing yet, do they? I know that.
they have secured a housing at Art House, and they have some agreements with others as well.
Okay.
So
They haven't developed any.
they themselves do not manage housing, correct, right? It would be with a different landlord. So the two areas that we're behind on are, not surprisingly, besides the home ARP, is the urban renewal revenue from property disposition. Again, that was projected that Inlet Island was going to advance faster than it did. So all told, we're at 53% when we want to be at 67% as of August. So it's not, it's not horrible, but it's not where we want to be, I guess. So
So this is through August.
yeah. Mhm.
Do you have a idea going forward, what you think you're gonna end up at?
I
Now that we're.
I think the trends you see here are going to be pretty close. We're going to be,
There's a projected column here.
yeah, but that projected is actually not through the end of the year.
Okay,
That was what our projected when we did the budget last year.
okay.
I think we're going to be 60,000 short where we hope to be. So then that brings us to the 2026 budget. So you've got the background of where we are and what last year's budget looked like. Historically, we've only adopted the expense side of the budget, and then it's been kind of for internal purposes, looking at the revenue side. The proposed budget includes, again, those projected revenues at the end, but we don't actually adopt projected revenues because they're somewhat hard to abide by. I mean, especially because we bill for actual expenses and we can't just automatically bill to an account without documenting that we spent time using that or expenses incurred. So you might want to go back all the way to the original front of your packet where there was a memo included on the budget, which, in brief summary is that the expense side of our budget looks very good. Going into 2026, less than a 1% increase is recommended. That includes a 3% increase for staff to stay equal to the planning staff in terms of salary. And maintains our 3.63 staff going forward, working, keeping our capacity in place and economizing everywhere else where we can. We've got a little more better with minimizing use of legal costs wherever we can and consultants. It does include $10,000 to pursue consultant work for Inlet Island. So we still have some funding built in the budget for that to pursue that, but it's very lean budget. I mean, it's 86% is staff.
Yeah.
And then the other 10 is independent contractors like legal. When we do a contract or if we have a property sale, we're going to need legal assistance on that. There's not a whole lot of wiggle room on that. So the expense side looks strong in terms of less than a 1% increase, while I think the year-to-year CPI is closer to 3.2. So we're under the CPI, and if we had a tax cap, we would argue we're under the tax cap or something like that. But the revenue side is the area where we're having some challenges meeting our revenues to match that funding. $465,000 is basically the expense to operate the IRA the way we have been. And we're in an environment where a continuation of an environment where our primary funding source, which was the CDBG and home admin funding, 20% of CDBG and 10% of home, have helped support the agency. We've had a declining we had declining funding since 2015 5. And in real terms, it's a quite significant decline. So we consider ourselves fortunate now when we get level funding, but that means that if inflation went up 24% since 2020, we're down 24%. And meanwhile, our health insurance is going up faster than inflation. And we're trying to keep salaries consistent with inflation. And we have all the other expenses that ripple through, like insurance. So that's the challenge, is we can't rely on that CDBG and home funding to be the core component of our revenues. Used to be 45, 46, 47% of our budget was provided there. Now it's 33%. So we're trying to make that up in other areas. We've done pretty well in loan revenue. The more small business loans we do, the more we get in back in repayments. We can utilize 20% of those repayments to support the budget. So that's a good growth area to look at and try to expand. But historically, we've always had 1 or 2 urban renewal projects in the works too, and that's been another strength for us. Right now, we're kind of in, again, with that Cherry Street and Inlet Island kind of in the works. There's not a lot of revenue coming back unless we have a sale or a lease of property in the interim. So that's where our gap is. So what I've built in the budget here is $30,000 from the city IURA MOU, which is yet to be executed. So I'm projecting that there'll be some revenue there. That may be low, that could be high. We don't know yet. I think it's not. It's trying to be conservative. So with that, I think, we're still looking at, assuming that we're still looking at a $35,000, $36,000 operating deficit in 2026. Now, some of that can be viewed as investment in an urban renewal project, and when we get to a sale, we'll get reimbursed for money of these expenses. But historically, we've tried to balance our revenue with our expenses and not exceed that, which is, of course, a prudent approach. But we have also built up some of our funds over years, because some funds come in and once they're received, they sit in our bank account. So if we receive proceeds from a sale of property, it goes into our bank account. If we had structured that as a lease, we would have revenue coming in on an annual basis. Kind of works out the same either way in some respects, but the way we do it, we try not to draw down from our bank account and just work based on our revenue. Again, that was ideal when we had the resources to make it work, but now we're getting a little bit more challenged. Though I guess what I want to note is that that 05 account, which is at $490,000 now, was at $250,000 like 6 years ago. So we grew that account over time because we were able to have revenues that exceeded expenses, or we brought in our budget under budget. We didn't spend every last dollar because we didn't do enough staff development or something like that. So in some ways, it's not. I don't want to sound the alarm that we have a negative, an operating deficit, because I think we could sustain an operating deficit for several years if it was relatively modest, and if we had a plan for how we were going to get back into stability. And so I think the focus really coming out of this discussion for the budget is, one, hopefully we'll have a recommendation to adopt the budget as presented or changes that you think are appropriate. And two, to kind of get everybody on the same page of what is our strategy for trying to bring in more revenues. I'm suggesting that the MOU with the city should be more of a long-term thing, not just a one-year thing. And I think that is working out in terms of discussion with the city, that it could be a living document that is renewed on an annual basis. Urban renewal activities, I think we want to keep focusing on those. And I think there'll be some revenues if the neighborhood housing services is successful with the Lucy. There will be some revenues coming back to us because we've incurred some costs associated with that. I didn't build that into the budget because they are in a very competitive application process for that project, and it may not come through until next year, for example. And even when they get approved, there's like a 6-month timeline before they close on the financing. So I don't want to be overly optimistic and miss our projections again. But that could be another example of a relatively modest urban renewal project. But the bigger ones would be Cherry Street or Inlet Island right now, or a third project, which is in discussion, is the Seneca Garage. That garage has been declared by the engineering division as, I guess what they've decided is they're not going to keep putting in annual investments in it that are not critical. They bid out the project for doing kind of more structural repairs that are important but not are essential for safety. And they came in like 3 times over what the estimated cost was. They looked at the cost of that versus the
Right.
benefit and said, this garage doesn't have 30 years left. It has, 5 to 10 years left. I'm kind of making those numbers up. They would probably give more precise numbers, but they know that it was built in 1974. Our other garages from that era have been modified. Their recommendation is it would be a more prudent investment to look at redeveloping that than continuing to put in $1 million to $1.5 million per year in repairs.
Use or,
Oh.
because don't we have an agreement with it's the Hilton Garden and other things?
We do.
provide?
We do. Yes, there would probably have to be some parking. Would it be 448 parking spaces would be an open question. The initial thought is that, yes, there'd be a mixed use project, including parking there. But that's got to be decided by policymakers where they want to go.
Oh,
So that's on the table as a discussion.
move that timeline up. This decision.
No, I think we're in a position where our green garage and Cougar garage have sufficient capacity in a worst case analysis to handle the current demand. I mean, there's going to be peak times, a state theater show, a big Friday night, restaurant night or something like that, where maybe it would be taxed, but we have like about 1,500 parking spaces downtown and about 400 of them are in Seneca. And we have surplus parking in Cayuga, which has 700 parking spaces of about 250. And Green has also got some excess capacity at most times. So we could accommodate all of our current demand at those 2 garages. It wouldn't be as convenient for people and it would get pretty tight at times, but there is a capacity, an ability to do that. And we could be more creative with our on-street parking as well in terms of how we could manage that to make it match up with the demand. But I think there's a sense that there's a need for some more parking to be replaced if Seneca goes down. So that would be the big urban renewal project on the horizon, I think. But it hasn't really gone through the kind of common council decision-making process yet. It's just been identified as DPW's not recommending the year-to-year kind of financial investment and recommends looking at it as a redevelopment project. Probably including some parking, of course, yeah. So I guess to swing all the way back, you have a budget that has a less than 1% increase and a resolution about that and a number of exhibits for expenses as well as some projected revenues at the end. I kind of summarized the big picture, but it'd certainly be appropriate to take a look closer at any one area.
Any questions?
Well, that actually was my question to some degree, is that looking ahead, I mean, assuming that Cherry Street and Inlet Island do at some point go forward, I mean, how many more projects do we reasonably have in the next decade or so that are we reaching any kind of an end to the number of urban renewals we can actually do or should do? And how much of the proposal to raise revenue would be driven by the need for revenue rather than what's really a priority for the city?
That's a good question. Yeah. And I think, maybe the urban renewal projects skew more towards addressing housing issues in the community, which is a growing need. And we try to figure out how can we use the resources, mainly the land resources of the city or the IRA, to develop more affordable housing, for sale housing, rental housing. There has been some preliminary talk about could southwest area behind Walmart, if we have a solution for homeless encampments, be better utilized for modular housing, manufactured housing, affordable for sale housing.
Drainage and everything else down there.
There's a lot of challenges, indeed. A lot of challenges there for sure. But I'm just saying that I'm not sure there's a end to our community development needs, but we don't have unlimited land. We don't have surplus land. Typically, we think about surface parking lots or underutilized land is the, kind of the low hanging fruit for looking at redevelopment. So.
I think where I'm going with this a little bit, just as a devil's advocate question, is when the whole program, urban renewal agencies were started, is that sort of a little bit of a dinosaur of a model in terms of how communities are developing now? Is it?
I would say that the old school urban renewal is definitely a dinosaur. I mean, I think we've looked that the agency, for many years has indicated that the agency doesn't want to be involved with demolition with no redevelopment
Yeah.
and doesn't want to displace people without a solution for that. So we're not really like in that version of
1960s.
1960s or building the tuning fork construction where there was a lot of acquisition and demolition. So I think that, yes, that's a dinosaur for sure and not the way forward. But if you look at some of the newer agencies that have been created in upstate New York, like land trusts up in Syracuse, they're focused on urban renewal activities very much so, but it's more focused on how can we take a vacant home and redevelop it, make it a for sale home, affordable, focus on those issues. So I think that's kind of my sense of where the agency's focus is looking at it through that kind of a lens. Where can we enhance equity and affordability, neighborhood quality? I think there's a lot of discussion right now. How can we develop more middle housing? Missing middle kind of housing of like, can we be an example? For example, one issue that I'm thinking about, and there's been some discussion with the chair of the IRA is on Inland Island, would this be a good example of a place to pursue a condominium project? Maybe it's a middle income condominium for sale project versus looking at a hotel or, those kind of other uses. Or maybe that's not the right site. Maybe there's another place to try to.
Condominium, certainly, because we haven't had any.
You don't have
people
very many.
Shouting about that for decades now that we
Right.
don't have condominiums.
So
in this town.
maybe we.
So difficult. All the laws around condominiums
Yeah,
are so.
right. But most places have them
Yeah.
and there's a huge demand. So there's got to be some
Right.
other set.
Some way to get around it.
Perception of the challenge with Library Place was it didn't offer ownership. It was a pretty high rental or a high monthly cost, but you didn't get ownership with it. So had that been structured as a condominium, would it have done better? I don't know for sure, but that's kind of at the high end. I don't know if we want to,
I don't mean to, but is that leased out yet?
it's conveyed to a different developer
Right.
owner and the occupancy levels are higher. I know that.
And the age restriction is gone.
I think it was for part of the project. I don't know if it was completely wiped out. There was certainly flexibility brought in on the age. I don't
Thought
know
it
if it was,
wasn't 55 and over anymore, or whatever it was.
Right.
yeah, there was definitely a change in some of that. So yeah, I mean, it's a good question. Like what, maybe the agency has to rethink like what is the urban renewal agency?
Yeah.
Yeah, what are we trying to accomplish? I mean, at one time, there was a federal program that provided redevelopment assistance to community development agencies, CDAs. That's a program that came and went, but the agency at one time renamed itself or added a new name to it to say it was the Ithaca CDA, Community Development Agency, because it reflected a little closer the vision of we're not about tearing down structures and putting up parking lots, although we have done a little bit of that. Maybe we need to focus the urban renewal structure has some advantages. We have a unique identity from the city, so we can do transactions that the city can't do. We have authority to negotiate land prices and development activities. The city is challenged to do that. They have some rudimentary ways that they can do a sealed bid process and say, we only want to sell this property for condominiums, kind of thing, and do a sealed bid, but they can't determine who will be the buyer. So we have some benefits of an urban renewal status. And in fact, there are still several, urban renewal agencies active throughout the state. We're not alone. You can go on the the public authorities page and see the list of other urban renewal agencies that are reporting to the state on their activities. Jamestown, Buffalo, Binghamton, Elmira, I think Saranac. I mean, there's probably 20 of them across the state that are still active. And then there's about 5 of them that are inactive, I should say too, at least. Yeah, yeah. When the reporting requirements came in, several of them have figured out the balance was not there. Yeah, so, we have this mix of doing things that are the grant administrator. We're also have been administering other grants that the city gets, like the Restore New York grant, which is very much in the urban renewal kind of window. It's renovation for the most part. And that's, again, we have HODAG loan assistance for John Guttridge's project, but we also have Restore New York grant funding that was awarded to the city that we're administering for no reimbursement. And that was similar. We've done that program also with Southworks for a $2 million grant to address lead and asbestos hazards on Building 24 up there. And we have used that funding for Ithaca Gun, so we've done like 4 or 5 of those grants. None of those have had any reimbursement because the program prohibits admin funding to be provided with the funding. So, but those have advanced a lot of projects of the city, and I think I would argue the agency's mission of improving the neighborhood and invest in expanding the economy. So I think if we stick to our mission, we can find a lot of things that the Urban Renewal Agency can pick and choose to work on. But
It's great.
good question.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the resolution, I'm just gonna go back. That it looks like the resolution you're looking for is on page 19.
Yep.
It looks like it was kind of stunted at the end.
Resolved.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah, you're actually, I'm sorry, yeah.
Or something.
Be it
I was,
further.
let's just take out the be it further. I did edit that. I was going to add and be it further resolved that the staff is authorized to submit the proposed budget to the Public Authorities Control Board, but it doesn't really need to be there because we have to submit it anyway. So that's why it says and be further. And I said, oh, that's stupid. I don't need to add that in there.
Strike that.
I just strike the be it further. Yeah.
Further. Okay,
Because once the agency adopts it, then it's automatically authorized for the staff to submit
right.
it.
I just want to know what we were
Yep.
resolving here. So you're gonna move?
Do you want me to read it or just move it? I move the 2026 IURA budget as written to delete the phrase "and be it further."
Adopts the 2025 or 2026? Why does it say 25 here?
It's the date.
It's just.
Oh, okay,
Today's
right.
date.
Oh, that's the date, today's date, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, can I second? I can second. Back. All right, all in favor of adopting budgets proposed, say aye. Opposed? Abstentions? No, so it's 3 people. I don't have to look around a lot.
Sorry. You're right, it does. Yeah, I'm gonna change.
In that last. line, it
Resolve
says
line.
that-
Oh, you're
Yeah,
right.
hold on,
It
you're
does
right.
say 2025.
Jeez.
It means to say 2026, so we amend that, right?
Yep,
Okay.
we don't have to re-vote on that, do we?
No, I think if you all agree.
A friendly amendment. All right. That took a while. Okay, now we should be on to the mission statement.
Right, and I actually put your packets a little bit out of order so
That's
that
okay.
that evaluation form comes in front of that. So if you can skip back one page
That's on
after the
page
evaluation.
27, if anybody's following along, as the mission statement.
Saw it in here. Hang on.
So as part of our requirements for submission for public authorities, we have to renew the mission statement on an annual basis. This is what the resolution meets that requirement. There's no recommended change in the mission statement as presented to you, but you're welcome to reconsider it.
I think it reads
It's
pretty
fine.
well. Yeah.
I think it's fine.
So could I have and move the mission statement as written?
I so move the mission statement as written.
Reaffirms.
And second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All right, if not, all in favor of accepting the statement, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions are none. Now we're going back to the self-evaluation form.
Right.
And if you could explain about this.
So this again is a public authorities requirement that on an annual basis, the agency asks the board members to fill out an evaluation form, and it gets compiled and then reviewed back by this committee for the results, and then brought forward to the full agency for discussion on anything they want. It's an opportunity to modify this form if you want. Otherwise, we'll just use the form that's kind of presented. It's a very generic and applies to like all types of public authorities. But there's an opportunity to like identify particularly, modify this if you think it would be better or not. It is based on kind of what the public authorities control board thinks are the critical issues for board members and the relationship with staff and the functions. So it's very generic.
Is this just for the IRA board?
It's just for the IRA, yeah. Mhm.
Phew.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just gonna say, it's almost impossible to fill this out. Every place there is an and you will see so many ands in this. I mean, I'll give you an example. Of course, I can't find one now. Okay, the third one, board members comprehend their role and fiduciary responsibilities. They may not, and hold themselves and each other to these principles. That's it. That's two questions.
Multiple.
Yes, two things, and I don't know how you answer, and that is through the whole thing, it reads like that. And
Yeah.
it's like,
It's very comprehensive in trying to cover their bases essentially.
well,
Right?
but it's you may be like, well, yes and no, or yes, so I mean,
It reads a lot like the legislation reads, like, paragraph says you shall do this, and then
and
it's
they're all
spitting
single barrel
it back.
questions,
Yeah.
so
spitting it
you don't really
Um,
know how to, if they say,
back.
if they say no, you don't know which one they're saying no to.
But it would give us a chance to then explore the
To
issue,
go
I
back
guess, right?
further.
Yeah. So
So,
historically, we've had
I-
a lot of people, a lot of board members identify items under agree, and then there's been usually several that fall under the somewhat agree category. And then occasionally we get one that's somewhat disagree.
There's
Historically.
no place. Yeah, there is place for comment.
And we added that actually at a prior year at the suggestion of like, well, what about other things that are not listed here? Or, so it's an opportunity to modify this and edit it, or just go forward and see what the results are
It would take a lot of work to
to,
edit this into something that. Mhm.
I could bring that concern you have though to the board. That is this getting at the issues that the board would want to consider?
Well, and you might just say, look, if you find it really hard to fill out because it's asking you two questions in one in a number of places, then I don't know. I wish there was a place they could say, yes, I understand, but two, I don't think whatever. Anyway,
Well, another example, Kathy, is that there, and I see what you mean by this, but one about halfway down is the board knows the statutory obligations of the authority, and if the authority is in compliance with state law. Well, if Nels tells me it's in compliance, sure, okay, in compliance, I don't know otherwise.
Right, and that's where we're trying to explain the requirements when we do them, but there's so many that it would be hard.
Yeah,
for
I-
It would be
a
hard.
board member to.
And a
do it.
board
Well-
member is, it's sort of general oversight. It's to get into the weeds like this, which often after the and, it seems to imply that that's what we're doing. Then it's,
that gets like the one above it, the board meets to review and approve all documents
yeah.
and reports prior to public release. You may know you do that and is confident the information presented is accurate and complete.
The main responsibilities for compliance with PAL are some of the policies we've adopted, like the ethics policy, the whistleblower policy, the freedom of information policy, that our website is current with germane information, and that we are submitting on an annual basis the reporting. So the proposed budget is due to be submitted to PAL by November 1st. And that's why we're kind of working on this timeline to submit a budget. And then in March, we submit a whole series of information, including what property do we own and what kind of contracts have we executed. And you see, it's kind of unfortunately, it's not a user-friendly model to look at for a layperson, but that you'll see in a packet that gets submitted in March, along with the audit, that there's a slew of information that we're reporting back to PAL. One thing you could do if you were interested in following compliance is look at the ABO, it's called the Authorities Budget Office website, and they will list who's not current with submissions and call them out and encourage the governor to defund them or what's not defund? I mean, basically terminate their existence. It does take an act of the legislature as well and the governor to do that, but that would be another check for a board member to see, hey, are we, Nels is saying we're in compliance, but how do I know we're in compliance? That you could check that website and they'll list who's late and or has not submitted information.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine, but I think when say, look, if you find one you're unsure about, just comment it in the bottom if you can,
Yeah.
well, I know this, but I'm not quite sure about that part of the question, so that it actually means something to the people who are looking at it.
Agreed.
But other than that, do you need this moved or anything?
No, I'm just
No.
looking for your guidance. Otherwise, we'll use the form as it exists to ask board members to fill out, try to bring it back to you in January so you can see what the results are.
So. Also, I mean, I know it's hard. I hate having to put comments, but if somebody disagrees with something, it would be nice if they could comment on what specifically it is that they disagree with, so that
Right.
it could make things better if you need to. All right, now we just moving on to the financial review.
Right. So again, we almost have September ready, but we don't because our bookkeeper had a vacation and needed an extra week to get those together. So we're looking at August ones rather than September data here. We have the grants and how they're moving in terms of expenditure, the loan repayment report, and the lease repayment report. So working backwards, even though you see a little bit of red on the lease payments and a little bit of red on the loan repayments, everybody is current as we speak right now on both of those categories. So good news that our small businesses are all current with loan repayments. We don't have any issues currently. In terms of the spend down of CDBG and home funds, you will, on the left-hand column, you'll see some no's here and there, which is kind of raising an issue for us that they're not quite where we were hoping they would be, especially since we didn't meet the CDBG spend down this current year. We're very focused on making sure we can meet it come May of 2026. And that's
Just the beacon, I always forget.
okay. So the Beacon was the Inlet Island project. That one only stays here red because that's really for our bookkeeper to,
Okay.
we've reprogrammed that money for the 2026 action plan.
So does no mean
No means,
project's not going forward?
no, it means there's an issue. They're not on schedule.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that
it's no
that's
longer.
kaput. No,
And what is the collaborative street outreach program?
that's,
That's not going forward.
it is actually going
Is it?
forward as we
Isn't it St.
understand.
John's?
Oh, no, the collaborative one is OAR.
Oh,
Working as kind of street outreach with people in encampments
Oh.
and at
okay.
risk of being homeless. That's a no because it took them a very long time to sign our grant agreement. And we wanted them to be spending funds and they had not even executed the contract. So that's why that was a no. It's not. They have now returned their board resolution indicating that they want to do the program, and they have actually indicated to us that they have incurred expenses that could be eligible for reimbursement already. So I think that one is
that's
an August no, but maybe a September,
Right.
we would have taken that off the list of no's.
so we are right now.
OAR is headquartered at Fulton Street where it meets the bridge crossing over. It was a Sal's Pizzeria's in that same plaza.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where they're located right now. They like that location better in many respects from where they were located previously. They
It's a little dangerous. A lot of traffic there.
traffic rise, yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
so
they have a little bit,
full
yeah,
traffic,
they got a little bit
goodness.
more real estate to work with in terms of, yeah, I think
How many
that
people? How about the homeowner rehab for INHS? Is that,
that's a serious problem for us because that's part of the reason why we didn't make our spend down.
right, that's a lot of money.
So that's a 2022 CDBG homeowner rehab. It's a no in 2022. It's also in 2023.
Right? And
So in combination, they have at one time $280,000, which they had only had spent like $35,000, $40,000 as of like May and June. They ran into, in some respects, it was pandemic influence because they couldn't get inspectors into homes during the pandemic. And then after the pandemic subsided, they couldn't get contractors because the contractors were busy working for other projects. So they ran into these kind of twin challenges. They now say they have a backlog, a waiting list, a significant number of people on the waiting list. But still they, until just recently, they had very hard difficulty getting 3 quotes for a construction project. So we did some research on the federal funding, and federal funding, CDBG only requires 2 price quotes. Unfortunately, their other funding in their project, we're not the sole funder for the rehab program, requires 3. So they're still kind of, only in certain instances can they go forward with only 2 quotes, and trying to get, 3 electricians to quote you a project or a plumber is a real challenge. So it's not so hard for roof work. There's more people doing roofs and things like that. So this program is really designed to do about $25,000 of renovation to a home owned by a low mod income person. And they usually can't do the full scope of what is needed anyway with that kind of funding. If you go over a certain amount, you have to do comprehensive lead abatement, which a homeowner balks at the cost because they don't see the immediate benefit. It chews up part of their funding to do the roof or the bathroom they want worked on. And so INHS has found there's reluctance by some homeowners to go into those programs if most of their funding is going to go for lead abatement. Not that it's not necessary in many cases. And actually, one of the things staff has been encouraging INHS to do is, if you can't move the money fast enough at $25,000 per project, why don't you talk to us? And if you've got a $40,000 project, let's look at it and do the lead abatement. Maybe you don't do 6 units with that grant funds, you do 4 or 5, but move the money.
But yeah,
Move the
get the
money.
money moving.
So we now think that they're going to be able to spend down their 2022 homeowner rehab by the end of March coming up. So the 2022 should be expended. Hooray. The 2023 looks like they only have in the pipeline and in progress 3 of the 6 that they had originally thought they were able to do. So we are talking with them about reprogramming opportunities and where that's going to end up. So
You have to have it, you have to be back down to 1.5 by May.
yes, May 31st. Yes.
Important. It's
So we did a reprogramming already with the Cherry Street sidewalks. So we took some funds out of the ED loan fund and moved them into do the missing segments on Cherry Street. So that work is probably physically under work right now. So you'll probably, if you go out to Cherry Street, you'll see that there's a continuous sidewalk from Tabor Street. There will be a continuous sidewalk from Tabor Street, the 100 block of Cherry, and then wrapping back up Cecil Malone to Wegmans. There'll be a continuous sidewalk where there was no sidewalk for any of those segments 2 years ago. So that's a big investment and a big improvement. But I think from where we're looking at the moment, I think we're going to have at least $100,000 more for reprogramming to do. So of CDBG funds, which is an opportunity. So if you have ideas for housing or public facilities that can be spent by May 31st, or ideas, Nisa's keeping a list of backup projects, and we plan to bring them to the IRA to identify which ones we should pursue, because we know we're going to have some funds provided back to us, and they happen to be CDBG funds, so they're subject to that timeliness account.
Yeah, it has to be spent by May.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But for the most part, I'm trying to think. There are a couple other projects that are at risk, but they're not. They're somewhat related to the new federal requirements on the grant. So the new grant agreement has policy conditions attached to the grant, and one of them is they relate to executive orders, and one of them requires that any beneficiary receiving federal benefits must be checked against a immigration verification database. And so for projects, so that's putting a chill on a couple of our public service activities where people don't want to share their data on any kind of a federal database. So we think that might result in some agencies not accepting 2026 funds in the public service category.
That is,
Do we take voting yet?
I
No.
don't believe so.
Nope. Then, but that's the summary of the finances I have for you. And happy to answer any
Okay,
questions.
any questions for Nelson on that? Okay, staff report?
Don't have any additional staff items.
Meeting's
Can
good.
I ask one quick question?
Sure.
How's the conference center doing these days?
Well, this is their 13th month of operation. They've had about 75 events. They have now able to compare their projections that were, developed prior to opening with reality. They have the expectation was to run in the negative of about 500,000 a year, and they're closer to $1 million. However, room taxes are generated, are dedicated to the project, and room taxes have exceeded projections and continue to exceed projections. So the room taxes have been very healthy. So they recognize that this year is not, there needs to be more business done this year than this year. But a lot of conferences don't commit or have committed already for years, so when they opened, in 2025 and 26, some conferences are already committed to Saratoga and, others. So they think that they're still in a good position to attract some of the conferences that move around the state for statewide organizations. But they weren't in a good position in year one because those were already kind of committed out. So they expect that they're going to boost business quite significantly. They're also revamping their marketing program they now have a better sense of what kind of events are likely to be here. So originally the pro forma talked about weddings
Mhm.
and Cornell related things. So those are not really filling up the space. That's not really a sweet spot that they were hoping for. So they're looking at what is the market demand
Right.
there for. And then there are some impacts of, there was an expectation to be spillover from Cornell, but because of federal funding related to Cornell, there really isn't that spillover either that was hoped for. So they're in a good spot in terms of reserves and that the room tax is covering all the costs. There's no draw on the general fund, but they know that repeating this year would start to put pressure
Right.
if they had a repeat of this year. They also have worked through a number of building related issues that have created some challenges for them as well and dramatically increased their insurance costs, which was not expected to have an insurance bill at this level that it is. So there are a lot of challenges, but they've had a lot of successes, and 2026 will be a really important year. I'm not an expert on the conference center, so if we wanted to have more input on that, we'd have to bring in some resources from the local development corporation to answer the questions.
General question.
Yeah.
There was a presentation to Common Council on Wednesday evening, which is on YouTube. It starts at hour and 47 minutes if you want to look at that.
Okay.
I did hear one comment, I don't know, that with all the building on State Street, all the housing building like Lower State Street, that the businesses are not, their patrons can't find parking anymore.
Boy, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Wait, when you say Lower State Street, you mean,
Gimme.
Yeah,
Is that-
around
Oh.
Gimme or State Street Diner
okay,
or.
Well, the
and-
last week, every single spot for 4 blocks around, and I know this because I would like a pilgrimage to Gimme most days. It's all contractor parking. And you can
Really?
tell because everything is a pickup truck there. It's for blocks around and it's all up and down.
and
the
they get
block.
there first, so.
Yeah,
they-
and
they-
they stay all day.
But there was one of the business owners was saying that people like in the apartments, and I only bring this up because another apartment is gonna open. Will park the car there on the weekend and it just stays there all weekend.
Yeah.
The people who live in the apartment, so that there's no available
Turnover.
parking for their customers, and that's having a real impact on them.
I should bring that up with the city manager, because there's an internal discussion about parking policy and when should the city charge or enforce parking and monitor it, because currently we don't, parking's free on weekends on street and we don't enforce any time limitations, and that in this case is having an adverse impact on
Right,
on
on
the businesses. So there is an ongoing discussion about that at this, with the city manager about rethinking some of those policies.
Yeah, I said I would
And,
bring it up. I mean,
uh,
it's hurting.
That's interesting
people
to know.
down there.
Yeah,
And that's before this other one
we
has
could
even
somehow
opened
get them
up.
in, we could somehow get them in the parking garages or something that would free up some spaces, but that's kind of 4 blocks away. 4
Yeah,
blocks
it's
away.
and people do, what is the new one called?
The Stately,
Oh,
the Stately is the one that fronts on 3 different streets.
3 different streets, and that hasn't even opened yet, and that doesn't have parking either.
Well, that's the main project, right? That's being
Yeah.
built, I think. I don't,
Right, but the one, I don't,
is there another one being built?
well, no, it's not being built, but the one, okay, across from Diane's Automotive, whatever that is. You know which one?
There.
Ironworks, is that what
Yeah.
it's called?
Yeah,
That already is causing problems on State Street because of the tenants there.
for the weekend parking, for example.
Yeah, weekend
Got it,
parking,
got
and
it,
it's,
yeah.
like, so, another one is only gonna exacerbate.
Well, to say that's one of the few, in my architectural opinion,
Yeah,
few nice buildings that have gone in downtown.
it is,
works
it's
it
nice, but I
Very
don't-
nicely.
and I don't, there may be some parking for that.
They actually do have parking
And they
under
do
the
have parking in
building
the back.
and they've leased the Wiley's, the former Wiley's cleaner lot as well, but they probably have demand that exceeds that.
Yeah, and they
Um,
may have to pay for those parking. I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting.
But anyway, there was a
It's a good point.
business owner down there just said that it's impossible now for their clients
Oh,
to come in and park, and they've been getting a lot of complaints.
no, I haven't heard that, so
Yeah,
that's,
I can.
you've lived
second
that.
So next meeting is January 16th in
That'd be the
2026,
3rd Friday of the month.
if that's all right. All right.
All right,
Do I have a motion to adjourn? Second,
Second.
all right.
favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, folks,
First
thank
and
you.
forward trio moves through again.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Lovely to see everyone.